The California oil producer's goal is to achieve an incident and injury-free workplace. Safety is a core value, and that belief must be shared by all employees working on our properties. We believe injuries are preventable, and we need your involvement and commitment to achieve our common safety goals. This video is an overview of our safety expectations. We'll spend the next 30 minutes reviewing the critical safety issues that affect your work every day. Let's start with the basics, your safety responsibilities. First, you must follow your company's safe work practices. Second, read the Contractor Safety Handbook provided by the producer. The handbook is your guide to safety expectations while working on our property. Keep it handy so that you can refer to it whenever you have questions. We have developed this video to help you identify some of the hazards you might face on the job. Your company will give you details and training about the specific hazards at your job site. Hazard recognition and participating in safety tailgate meetings is important for you and your coworkers' safety. Finally, some work areas will have additional requirements. Your company may have safety rules that are more strict than those of the oil producers. Check with your supervisor. You should recognize on-site safety rules cannot cover every possible situation. You still need to use your own good judgment. As you begin your job, see that you wear proper clothing and the right personal protective equipment for your job. Stop any work that's not being done safely. You have the authority and the duty to stop unsafe work. Then correct the problem or safeguard the condition and report it to your supervisor. All work must be planned. Your supervisor is responsible for planning work, but you must know and follow the plan. This planning includes emergencies and your responsibility to respond quickly in the event an incident or injury occurs. Your company must provide you and your coworkers with a safety orientation and job-specific training. Your company must also provide the right tools and personal protective equipment in good working order. Supervisors must know and follow all safety policies. They must notify the producer of incidents immediately, investigate all accidents, and then submit a report to the producer. Personal protective equipment, hydrogen sulfide, H2S, and respiratory protection. Now let's discuss the importance of personal protective equipment. Everyone who works at our locations must use basic personal protective equipment. We require everyone on the job site, including visitors, to wear an approved hard hat. Most producers require hard-toed safety footwear. Many producers require that everyone wear safety glasses with side shields or acceptable wraparound safety glasses. Some producers require snake chaps to be worn in certain situations. Gloves must be used when the job requires it. You must wear proper work clothing, including long pants and a shirt with sleeves. Never wear loose or torn clothing or sleeveless shirts. Some producers do not allow hooded shirts or sweatshirts to be worn. Most producers require fire-resistant clothing, FRC, to be worn. Consult with your supervisor with questions regarding this requirement. If your clothes get soaked with oil or any other substance that could catch fire or irritate your skin, change the clothes as soon as possible. Some producers may have prohibitions regarding wearing rings or other jewelry while working on their properties. Please check with the producer you are working for regarding specific prohibitions or requirements. Safety goggles and a plastic face shield must be worn when grinding, chipping, sawing, drilling, or hammering on metal. Chemical goggles must be worn anytime a splashing hazard exists. Approved hearing protection must be worn by all personnel working in or near posted areas, or if the job task requires it. Different jobs require specific safety equipment. For example, safety harnesses and lanyards must be worn by employees working at unprotected heights above the ground. Many locations produce crude oil and gas containing hydrogen sulfide, H2S, or sour gas. Hydrogen sulfide is poisonous and can be lethal in low concentrations. All contract personnel working around production equipment, including well work and drilling operations that handles crude oil containing H2S, must be trained in H2S safety. Your company is responsible for providing you with appropriate respiratory protection and required training. Many areas require the use of personal H2S monitors. You must be trained by your company in the operation of monitors. At a minimum, personal H2S monitors must alarm at 10 parts per million. If your monitor alarms, move quickly crosswind, uphill, and away from the source. When working in a possible H2S environment, stay upwind of the potential source and plan a route of escape. Wind indicators are provided around equipment handling H2S and at rig locations. Never attempt to rescue an H2S victim unless you have a backup person available and have donned SCBA. Communication is a critical part of any safety program. Let's look at 3 important elements: the oil producer's safe work practices, the safe work permit, and energy control or lockout, tagout, blockout procedures. Safe work practices are a set of requirements that everyone must follow when working on our properties. A key section of safe work practices are the basic work rules. Everyone must follow these rules at all times. Let's review these basic rules. Always act with safety in mind, both your own and your coworkers. Plan each job properly. Identify and address known hazards. Do not start the work unless you can do it safely. Stop or pause any unsafe job or operation. Some areas in California can experience high daytime temperatures during work hours. Under these conditions, heat stress can be a serious danger and cause long-term illness or death. While working in these conditions, ensure that you and those around you drink plenty of water. Use good judgment during tasks that require strong physical exertion. If you feel too hot or experience dizziness or other symptoms, rest in the shade and carefully monitor your symptoms. Seek medical help immediately if signs of heat exhaustion are manifest, such as hot, dry skin, profuse sweating, confusion or dizziness, nausea, or shallow breathing. Do not work unless you are fit for duty. Do not work unless you are properly trained for the job. Do not take part in fighting, scuffling, horseplay, or any other activity that could injure someone. Comply with all posted warning signs. Wear required protective equipment. Use and maintain tools and equipment safely. Operate vehicles safely. You must follow the substance abuse policy. You may not possess, use, or sell illegal drugs, paraphernalia, or legal but improperly used drugs while working at our locations. This rule includes prescribed or over-the-counter drugs that are not used for the intended purpose. Do not report or return to work when impaired by alcohol. You may not possess or use alcoholic beverages on our properties. You may not carry or use firearms, weapons, fireworks, explosives, live ammunition, or devices that will start fires. Do not remove, damage, or interfere with any safety device or warning sign. Smoke only in designated areas. Report all safety incidents to your supervisor right away. This includes personal injuries, equipment damage, and spills. Do not steal, damage, destroy, or remove any property belonging to the oil producers or its employees, contractors, or visitors. Make sure you have a means to call for help when working in isolated areas. Housekeeping rules are an important part of safe work practices. Always keep your work area clean and orderly. Make sure emergency exits are clear. Clean up mud, oil, grease, and litter right away. And make sure to collect trash and debris at least once a day. You must have a safe work permit approved by the on-site producer's representative for any work that has been identified as non-routine or hazardous. Your supervisor will ask everyone involved to review the permit and then post it at the job site. Make sure you understand all the permit requirements before starting the job. Stop work if conditions change, a new hazard occurs, or an oil producer representative asks you to stop. Now, let's review some critical hazardous exposures that can be encountered while working on the oil producer's property. Hazardous stored energy. Energy control is required whenever you are performing tasks which involve equipment, machines, piping, or vessels which could potentially injure you due to a release of stored energy. Energy sources must be identified and isolated to a zero energy state before service and maintenance can be performed. Electricity is a form of energy, AC or DC, used to power equipment, machinery, or control systems. Consider all electrical equipment and power lines to be energized. Pressure energy can be instrument air, natural gas in pneumatic systems, and oil or synthetics in hydraulic systems. Momentum gravity energy is the force in moving equipment components caused by gravity or inertia. It is critical to identify momentum energy after the power source has been shut off. Residual energy can occur after the power source has been shut off or disconnected. Special energy sources include processed liquids, hydrocarbon gases, and steam in lines or processing equipment. Methods of energy isolation. The following are ways to isolate energy sources. Positive physical isolation. Remove spool, air gapping. Blind flanges, slip blinds, double block and bleed, and lockout of energy source. Locks must be used with tags to isolate energy sources. Tags should indicate the person responsible for the lockout, the reason for the lockout, the job being performed, and the date. Each producer has developed equipment lockout, tagout, blockout procedures. Contractors must understand these requirements and assess how their own procedures will work in conjunction with the producers. Never shut down or start up equipment or open or close valves until you notify the producer's representative or have been directed to do so by the producer's representative. Group locks can be used to isolate equipment for a group of workers. Lockout must provide the same level of protection as utilizing individual locks. No one may attempt to start up equipment, machines, or processes that are locked and tagged out of service. Specific procedures must be followed to restart, re-energize, or activate equipment or systems that have been isolated. The basic requirements which must be followed before isolation devices can be removed and equipment can be energized are: 1. Notify affected employees that the isolation devices are being removed. 2. Check to ensure that all personnel are clear of the equipment or system to be re-energized. And 3. Locks used to isolate equipment can only be removed by the person who originally applied the lock. Confined spaces. Confined space entry permits are required any time confined spaces are entered. Never enter a confined space unless you have received the appropriate training, have the right equipment, and have been tasked with work in that area. A confined space is any space that has limited or restricted openings for entry and exit and is not intended or designed for human occupancy, has the potential to contain flammable, toxic, or oxygen-enriched or deficient atmospheres, or contains any other recognized serious safety or health hazard. A trained attendant or standby person must be assigned to a confined space entry at all times. Forced air ventilation equipment, appropriate lighting, rescue equipment, and continuous atmospheric monitoring may also be required depending on the nature of the hazard. Safe equipment operation is another important part of injury prevention. Only designated and qualified people may operate power tools, equipment, or shut down equipment. Safe vehicle driving. You must have a valid driver's license to drive on our property. Practice defensive driving, obey posted speed limits, drive only on the prepared roads, wear seat belts at all times, use pull-through parking whenever possible to avoid unnecessary backing. If you must back up heavy equipment, have a spotter signal you. Some equipment requires backup alarms. Some producers require that you never leave your vehicle unattended while it's running. At these locations, stop the motor and set the parking brake and put the transmission in low gear. Chalk your wheels if you think there's a possibility the vehicle might roll. Some oil producers may have special driving procedures or rules in their areas, such as specific speed limits and prohibitions regarding cell phone use while driving. Be sure to check with your supervisor at your work location for any special requirements. Ergonomics. Always use safe lifting techniques. Improper lifting is the most common cause of back injuries. Face the load you're about to lift. Bend your knees and hold the object close to your body. Keep your back straight. Use your legs, not your back, to lift the load. You should never try to lift more than 50 pounds by yourself. Excavation and trenching. Unless otherwise determined by a competent person, all soil at our locations is considered to be Class C sandy or loose soil. A competent person is required to be on site. For our operations, the Cal OSHA regulation for excavation or trenches deeper than 5 feet shall be followed when personnel are required to enter. Proper protective measures shall be taken, such as sloping, shielding, or shoring. Barricades are always to be installed for any open excavation or trench. Cranes and rigging. All cranes must be operated by qualified operators. A qualified signal person must also be on duty. All power lines should be considered energized unless proper measures have been taken for de-energizing. When work is being performed near energized overhead power lines, no part of the crane or boom will be permitted within 10 feet of power lines. Consult with your producer representative for specific power line clearance requirements in your location. Most California oil producers recommend the use of the Look Up and Live flag procedure for crane operations at their sites. This procedure is designed to keep the crane operator from overlooking or forgetting major steps in the operation of his or her crane. The crane operator shall remove the flag from the load line or lifting hook and look up for power lines while walking around the crane. The operator then attaches the flag to the top of the steering wheel of the vehicle. If power lines are on location, they must be identified by placing cones 10 feet out below the lines. When crane operations are complete, and before any driving begins, the crane operator shall remove the flag from the steering wheel and clip it to the load line. Rigging methods depend largely upon the job to be done. It is important to check all phases of the job and all possibilities of job deviation, which may affect the rigging components. Loads should be controlled by use of a tag line or snub line. Never walk or work under a suspended load. Safe welding. Welding operations include a high risk of fires and injuries. Be on the lookout for conditions that could lead to a fire and take fire prevention measures. Always keep a fire extinguisher on hand. Be sure to use guards on grinders and wire wheels. Fire prevention. Fire prevention is a serious concern in every job. Never smoke or use open lights around crude or petroleum tanks. Before welding, cutting, or grinding in a grassy area, remove any material that might burn. Every location has its own emergency action plan. You must know your location's plan and be able to take quick action if an emergency occurs. When an emergency occurs, immediately shut down work in a safe manner and report to the designated evacuation area. General environmental rules. Air emissions. California oil producers are committed to protecting the environment. We ask that you make every effort to help us meet this goal. We are required to maintain leak-free facilities to comply with our air permits. We ask your help to ensure that all fittings are made up tight and that all sources of gas leaks are plugged off. Spill reporting. You are required to immediately report any spill or release of materials, including crude oil and/or condensate, to a producer representative. Stream channel protection. Disturbance to navigable waterways, stream channels, or any other watercourse with habitat that may support endangered species in its bed or banks must be approved by the producer. Disturbance to stream channels requires permitting prior to commencing any work on the stream bed or bank. Waste disposal. Any job is not complete until all waste and trash are removed from the job site and disposed of properly. The contractor is responsible for the disposal of all trash and waste generated by their activities. The disposal method must be approved by the producer. If you have any questions about hazardous waste, please contact your supervisor or oil producer representative. Endangered species. State and federal laws protect threatened and endangered species from harm in order to prevent these species from becoming extinct due to human disturbances. These laws prohibit killing, injuring, or harassing species classified as threatened or endangered. Violation of these laws is punishable by fines and imprisonment. Endangered species are known to exist in most California oil fields. Contact an oil producer representative at your work location for a list of endangered species present at that location. Now let's take a look at work areas where you may face certain specific hazards. Keep in mind that this video is a general overview of some of the common hazards. Your company will give you details and training about specific hazards at your job site. Your Contractor Safety Handbook includes a more complete list of hazards you may face while working at our locations. In the following segment, we will review possible hazards in major areas, including site-specific general hazards, hazards associated with wells, and hazards at and around our facilities and equipment. Let's start with general hazards. Our fields contain a vast network of above-ground and underground lines and pipes, which carry a variety of potentially hazardous fluids. You must always be aware of these lines and watch out for them while working. For example, be careful not to drive over an exposed pipeline. Above-ground lines include hydrocarbon pipelines, steam lines, fresh and produced water lines. And remember, these lines may be very hot. You could get a severe burn by touching a line. Many hydrocarbon lines contain products that may include hydrogen sulfide, commonly called H2S. As we mentioned earlier, H2S is a poisonous gas that's heavier than air. Underground lines, although we cannot see them, may be more hazardous than above-ground lines. Be extremely careful when doing any excavation work. We can provide maps that show the type and location of underground lines. Always talk to your supervisor and the producer representative before digging. Most oil fields have subsurface valve boxes. Valve boxes are low spots where H2S and other harmful vapors may accumulate, and a valve box is a confined space. Valley fever is a fungus endemic to the soil in portions of California. This fungus can cause valley fever. Transmission of the fungus spores by wind can expose virtually anyone in California or areas in the southwestern United States to valley fever. Workers who perform tasks that disturb the soil may be at a higher risk. In some cases, valley fever can result in serious illness or even death. Doctors in other regions of the country may be unfamiliar with the symptoms of valley fever. Contractors must advise all of their employees of the symptoms of valley fever and the need to obtain immediate medical attention if they experience or observe any of these symptoms. Chemicals are another general hazard you may encounter anywhere in the oil field. Many of them can be harmful. Always read the materials safety data sheet before working with any chemical. Follow the precautions carefully and wear the appropriate personal protective equipment. The last category of general hazards includes plants, insects, and animals. You may find poison oak at some work sites. Learn to recognize this plant and stay away from it. Plants such as cactus and stinging nettles can cause painful injuries. Always be careful when working around plants with thorns. Bees, spiders, and other stinging insects are common everywhere in the oil field. Watch out for insects when working in areas where they live. Snakes, including poisonous snakes, live in many of our areas. Watch where you walk and look around before reaching, especially in areas where snakes may hide. The second group of common hazards is associated with wells. Our oil fields contain several types of wells, ranging from producing wells to injection wells. Each type has its own hazards. The most common wells are heavy oil producers used in thermally enhanced production. Fluids from these wells may be very hot and may contain H2S and other flammable gases. Other wells produce lighter crude. These wells present a special fire hazard because the oil they produce has a lower flash point than heavy oils. Steam injection wells pose high temperature and pressure hazards. They also contain large volumes of hot steam and possibly H2S. Also, be aware of high pressure and possible high temperature hazards when working around water flood injectors. Drilling sumps or reserve pits at drilling or workover locations have flags or fencing marking the boundaries. Be very careful when driving near active drilling or workover operations. Our third group of hazards occurs in and around facilities. Steam generators are essential to produce California's heavy crude, but these generators involve a number of potential hazards. Never go into a generator site unless your job specifically requires it. The most obvious hazards are the very high temperatures and pressures needed to generate steam. High noise levels are another possible hazard. Always wear hearing protection when working around steam generators. Steam generator sites may contain hazardous chemicals, such as the caustic used in the scrubbers. Drilling and well servicing crews must pay close attention to the wind direction when working near a generator. Never work in the path of a flue gas scrubber plume. These plumes may contain small amounts of caustic vapor and sulfur dioxide. Both can be irritating if you breathe them or get them on your skin or in your eyes. Casing vapor recovery units, or CVRs, collect the casing gases from nearby wells. CVRs are a possible source of H2S and other flammable gases. Test stations are accumulation points for the flow lines from producing wells. Never operate any valve at these sites without prior specific instructions. Closing a flow line inlet valve while a pumping unit is operating can cause packing failure or line rupture. Gas plants and cogeneration plants, like other major facilities, are often fenced. These plants are limited access areas. All workers must check in, and only those with required jobs and proper training will be allowed inside. Tanks are another potential hazard in our operations. Empty tanks pose a risk of fire or explosion, since they often contain oil and flammable vapors. An empty tank is a confined space when going inside. Never walk on top of a tank without obtaining the producer's approval and taking necessary precautions. Radiation is a possible hazard in some areas. We sometimes use radioactive materials for drilling, well servicing, and X-raying pipe. Be alert for radiation warning signs and don't go inside a posted area. Drilling, construction, blasting, well servicing, and well workover operations all present different hazards. Never go into a specialized work area unless your job requires you to be there. For those of you who may work in the offshore environment, you will receive a thorough orientation about the hazards you can encounter there, prior to and upon arrival at the offshore platform. Now that you've seen the areas where you may encounter hazards, you're ready to learn more about these potential hazards and how to protect yourself. Your company will provide this specific training. Stay alert for possible hazards and use the appropriate personal protective equipment. Be sure to ask questions if you don't understand the hazards of a job. If you're not sure how to do a job safely, don't do it. See your supervisor for more instructions. Remember, the California oil producers and your company have a strong commitment to safety. We both have the responsibility to provide a safe workplace and to inform you about possible hazards. You, in turn, have the responsibility to know and follow our safety procedures, to stop any work that's unsafe, and to practice safety every day in every job you do.